Okay, yeah, let's get started. Ruth, did you want to share the agenda in the chat? And I'm gonna queue up the activities to share out. Okay. So I'm going to share out 3 different activities, kind of walk everyone through it. The screen is so dark. The first is going to be a poll, and this will be the opening activity for the presentation that Ruth and Jack shared out with you all. The second activity is going to be a Google form. And this is a link that I'll put in the chat, but I'd like for all of you to sort of click on it, click on the link, just answer it like you're in the attendance. And then lastly, I'm going to share out a culminating activity for audience members to do as part of the public engagement piece. And so I'll walk everyone through that. So the first one is a poll. I've set up a template version of this poll and this meeting so that when different state board members present, each one will already have a poll set up for them, so they don't have to reset up this poll.
Okay.
And I created a walkthrough. I think all of you have in your email.
Normal morning stuff.
No, that's my
That's awesome.
If you wonder what my alarm clock sounds like, that's my alarm clock right there.
Mine is a meow.
Yeah, I have a meow too. I have a meow and a wee woo. So, okay, so I'm launching a poll. If all of you would like to take this, this will give members instant feedback from the audience members. And in the walkthrough, that's right. Theodore. So we give. So during the presentation, give the audience maybe 1 minute to answer these, like read through it, answer the questions. And then.
And can we take this poll right now?
Yeah,
I'm seeing the time and stuff like that.
I'm sorry. Yeah, could you click on everything and just take the poll now?
Click on the question. I'm trying to click on a question, and
so we're only able to view the questions right now.
Right.
We can't take the questions.
right.
Oh,
It might be because we're panelists.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. Well, that stinks.
Well, lesson learned right now.
Yeah, that is a good lesson learned.
In case we're in a meeting and we make somebody a panelist or something like that.
So I guess first off, it's good that you can see the questions. Does anybody have any feedback on these questions, or like the first one is just a choose one sort of deal, and then the second one is choose all that apply.
So for 2, should it be on what do you think the star rating is based?
Yeah.
Okay. And then some of the choices are not choices. Like the first choice looks to be a repeat of the title.
Right. The one right underneath it is almost verbatim.
Yeah. And then the third choice looks to be missing some words.
The third choice in
How much
Yeah.
students' test scores went up in the
This year. Previous year.
Yeah,
Oh,
and I can't, I can only, my poll only shows me how much students' test scores went up in the
strange. Yeah, on mine, it finishes the sentence, so I'll have to look into that. Thanks.
Yeah,
Jessica, if you expand your poll, does that help? Like make it
I'm
bigger?
not
as
able
opposed-
to expand my poll window.
That's important too. Okay,
Yeah, like, usually if you touch the edge of the
right.
graphic with your mouse, you get the expand option. There's no way to expand it. I can't go up or down or side to side.
Huh. Do other people have that? Mine does expand.
Mine doesn't expand.
I was able to expand to the right, but I don't know if it changed the content.
Okay. Carlene, that helps because I can expand to the right as well. Right
Nope,
or left.
I can only scroll.
I can expand to the right or left. I can make it wider, but that's it.
I'm gonna look this up after this meeting and just see if that's the case for some audience members and not others. And just see how we can fix that.
Okay. Interesting.
Okay, so I'm gonna end poll and then members would walk through. Can you see the, oh, I'm sorry. You'd hit share results and then these would show the different results as a poll
Okay.
would do in Zoom. And so
Darren,
yes,
so I am a co-host. That's why I can't expand. Because what I'm
Oh.
getting all the same controls you are, like the option to relaunch, the option to stop sharing. So that, I don't think
Okay.
you need to look it up. I think basically participants, clearly attendees can see that, but anyone on the hosting side can't.
okay. All right, that's good to know.
Yep, that saves you something to look up.
Yeah. Time is so precious that definitely saved me like every drop. Okay, so that was the first poll. The second one is this. I'm gonna send out a link in the chat. Can all of you click on that? Take maybe a minute or so to read over your options and just click around, click on any that apply for the next minute or so. And then I'm going to show you on the screen how to share out the results of this. This was just too long to add as a poll in Zoom. So and to sort of display the findings. This seemed like the better option. Can all of you see this or access that link?
I do. I can, and I can edit it. I can pick things.
I figured out how to make cold brew ice cubes. So I've been sipping on those for the last days of summer.
That sounds amazing.
So good.
I've got my hot coffee in my very fitting mug.
Drink all the time.
So as I'm doing this, I'm thinking there's
Uh-huh.
too many columns.
There's too many.
Columns that it takes a long time. I'm interested what other people think. That's my,
Okay, so there should be 4 columns.
yeah, I'm just saying it takes a long time to think it through, but
Okay.
see what
Yes.
others.
Could all of you just like looking at those columns and at the rows, let me know your thoughts on change anything with these. Select the top 3 indicators that would demonstrate school quality, enable you to advocate for targeted. I can't say everything.
Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I missed the top 3 and I did all of it. So, okay, if it's top 3, I think that's fine.
And it'll be important to,
Yeah, yeah.
well, that's a good point, to emphasize only choose
Yeah.
3 so that it.
Just bold, maybe the top 3. Yeah.
Yeah.
So can I ask a question about the title columns? So I think what we're getting at in this activity is that the STAR framework is different things to different people.
Exactly.
or can serve many different purposes.
Hmm.
What I wonder about is, we have talked about this extensively about the difference between school quality and school performance. Are we being deliberate in our choice of saying demonstrate school quality versus saying demonstrate school performance? Because again, OSSI identifies it as a tool of school performance, but we feel like some folks use it to denote overall quality. So are we deliberate in that choice, or is that incidental?
I would say it's deliberate. I don't want to speak for everybody, but where it was very explicit that it was just performance, we tried to use that throughout all the materials, but otherwise be broad about quality or quality/performance. And there's no problem if it's helpful to say school quality/performance.
That still
But
No,
sounds.
I think simpler is
I'm still
better. And
confused.
I just wanted to get a sense. My second question on that front is, how do you see the difference between enable you to advocate for targeted school resources actions versus incentivize good practices? What's the difference between those two things? Is that who does that? Because I read it and I say, well, the first one is asking me, the user, if having this information helps me do something, ask for something. And I think the third column says, does that help someone else, not me, incentivize what I should be doing at my school?
I think that's a good point. I will say the incentivize good practices, I think, came from an earlier survey of either the teachers or the principals. So I think you're right to pick up on that. It's a little weird to have it in this more general presentation. Unless you wanted to say incentivizes good practices for staff in your school, but I'm open to getting rid of it, changing it.
I mean, my take, given your
point.
point about there being a lot of columns, is I think we could get away with 3 columns. And I think we could do first, second, fourth as the 3 columns. That would make me as the user feel like I knew what the question was asking me pretty quickly and could answer it. That's my 2 cents. I'll be quiet.
Is that good for everybody?
Yes, I have something else though. I don't think the mixture of high school and elementary is appropriate. So maybe we should just do choices that are go across grades is my suggestion. So some of them are like high school only, and then growth in first and second grade, which I think are important depending on where you are. But if this is just everyone in a room taking it, it might just be, we should pick indicators that kind of go across grade span.
I think because some of that is, Carlene, because of what the STAR does. I think it does have to look at, there's a requirement to look at high school graduation rate and stuff like that. And that's why it kind of goes across both. I'm just assuming.
What, Carlene, would it help if we put it at the bottom so that it wasn't sort of mixed in? I worry about completely losing it. I mean, I'm not
Or
wed
maybe
to anything.
categorize by the grades. Like, you know, you do it at the top for the younger grades, the bottom for older grades, if you want to
Mhm.
keep everything. But like sitting here, and I was kind of like, whoa, this is really meaningful for if I were picking for, you know, one age group. I just had a hard time picking because it was like, well, do I pick the high school indicator or
Right.
the,
I get what you're
Yeah.
saying now.
it was taken
Oh,
away
because
from
you're
my
only
preschool.
picking 3, right?
Because you can
right,
only
right,
pick
right,
3.
right,
Thank,
right,
Carlene, I
right.
get it better now. Thank you.
I think there's a way to add logic to this, where I could add, the first question would be, what grade do you teach, or do your children go to school or whatever, and whatever they choose, they would see certain options, and so they would click on that. And when it comes to then collecting the data, I could get an Excel file with that and just
So-
sort of filter
Only question
out,
for that,
okay, for
Darren.
high school, they're saying this.
My only question for that, Darren, if they have siblings that are in different grades, would they take the test twice? You know, if they got multiple students and things like that are at different levels. I have a middle
Oh.
schooler and
Hmm.
you know, and an elementary student, soon to be a high schooler and a middle schooler.
Yeah,
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So then would I take the test twice to pick my top 3 for each one?
We'd say pick your favorite child and then go with that option. I think this would just.
So pick Doc Jr. over London. I get it.
I think part of this activity is also to re-emphasize what's in the slide. So it's also like, okay, again, these are the indicators that are in the STAR framework and those that are not in it. And we just want to get a general sense of it.
Right. Then we would have to say that in the things like understanding that you may have multiple students. We would like you to take this like a sampling and choose based on, you know, what you would like to base it on, you know.
And if there's a parent survey or something that's out, I think, or maybe there could just be something like, if you have multiple children or whatever in the chat, type out like one that really stands out to you or something like that for the other, or I don't know, maybe not
I
overcomplicate.
think we could ask people to pick one grade level to answer for, but what I worry about is overcomplicating this, because you're presenting it, people are filling it out. I don't have a good sense of that. I see Jessica nodding. That's my.
Yeah, I wonder if we could do something a little simpler that might say, select the top 3 indicators that would, comma, for elementary and middle school, and then have a second section that says, select up to, 3 indicators that would for high school, and then put the high school ones there. Just because there's nothing different except for high school.
Graduation and.
Right? Because the growth in reading achievement in 1st and 2nd grades is going to fit in that like elementary, middle school bucket. It's just the APIB. Or we could take off high school only and just leave it really general and say, like, if I'm thinking about what demonstrates school quality, do I think access to APIB participation tells me something about a school's quality? And then, if
I have a thought.
If I'm a parent of an elementary schooler and I don't know anything about APIB yet, I probably don't choose that.
I tend to agree with that a little bit more so.
Here's one other option. What if at the top it said something like choose whether you want to answer for an elementary school, middle school, or for a high school, and then you would get a different one? Or is that just also too much?
I think that tends to start being too much too. If we take off, like on the second question, middle school at elementary and middle school only, and then down at high school, I think you add kind of confusion when you add those 2 little bracketed areas. So I would take those off and just let them
just
choose.
Take off the high school ones.
Yes, and just let them choose. I think that's the simplest way, and let parents prioritize in their own minds. When you add those 2 things, you make it, they have to make a choice between their high school and their middle schoolers. If they have multiple, if they have multiple kids, by just taking that off, it allows them to just pick what's most important to them.
Yeah, because this is really a thought exercise, right? Like what we're trying to do is spark people's thinking on what are the purposes of these metrics? How do they think about these metrics?
Right.
And I don't know. I think that's going to elicit interesting discussion, because we may have high school families who say different things. And
I also agree that the thing is that we want them to have a rich conversation and everything like that, and that only confuses it. And if we need to have those for, like, I guess when we're tallying things up, but if they're not important for tallying things up, then we can take them off. So Darren, you can tell me, are you differentiating between high school and elementary and middle school? Because if you're not for this particular exercise, then they're unimportant anyway. So we could just take them off.
I'll play around with it, because the main thing is, or not the main thing, but a large part of this is sharing out the results. I want to see what that looks like.
And exactly. That's why I want to know, are you going to differentiate between the lower grades in high school when you share this out, if that's important to do or not?
Yeah, and in fact, let me share my screen. So what members would show is the results of this. So they would share their screen similar to the polls, but you would get to see this and they would walk through, okay, for demonstrate school quality, no one said anything for or it was like a high number for progress of students most in need. I mean, I was playing around with this. The tricky part is like we have Survey Monkey, but we can't let all members access that screen. And I think Google Forms, out of all the options, is the best. It's just that you'd have to scroll through this. And I think adding the heist, like that extra question at the beginning, might complicate the member sharing, differentiating that information. But maybe
Guys,
not.
what if we made it just for, we were just explicit that it's for elementary and secondary, or just took off the high school ones altogether?
I wouldn't take it off just because I think it aligns a lot with what's in the surveys and what's actually on the star rating. I don't know. I mean, that's just my opinion. It's just to leave that on. And I guess if we do leave on a high school, middle school, elementary school option, that would just be, it wouldn't overcomplicate it. It would just be like one extra thing for members to go over. And then on my end, I could filter out those responses. Right.
So do people have a strong view? Should we let Darren do any one of the above based on what he heard and move on? I am concerned about getting to the last exercise. And I no longer can see the gallery, so I don't know if people are nodding or anything.
And we're getting rid of number 3, right?
What?
Column 3, are we getting rid of this one?
Which one? Column 3.
Incentivize.
Incentivize good practice. Yes, I don't see its relevance.
Yeah.
I only see the other 3 as a demonstrate as we get through school quality, enables you to advocate for targeted. Okay. Help parents. Okay.
The
Those
rows,
great.
there are some that are just really lengthy, like the percentage of students who have reached proficiency on blah 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 blah. Like this is a long thing to share with the group. You know, it makes it harder for members and the audience to like read the actual outcome. So just something to keep in mind.
Okay.
Shall I jump to the last activity?
Yeah, do
Yeah.
people feel comfortable with that? So we're definitely changing the indicator 1. Darren will figure out the best way to accommodate the issue around the high school, middle school, elementary.
I'm okay. Jeff.
All right. And then the one other thing I would just say is if we can figure out any way to make these graphs bigger when we show them back to the audience, they're very, very hard to see right now. And with that, okay, let's move to.
That all
the
works for me.
culminating
Sorry about that.
activity.
When Darren was sharing his screen, I lost control of all my controls. Can you stop? Can I be not host?
Let me take you off.
I couldn't chat. I couldn't unmute.
Okay. You're no longer co-host.
Cool. I'm good. Let's move on.
Okay. So then the last activity would be, I'm going to share my screen, but each person or each audience member will get a link to a Jamboard. And I could duplicate this window. So pretty much what this activity allows is for you to at the very end, after learning about what the different states do, like what their school report card profile pages look like, the different approaches to ratings versus non-ratings, different indicators, and the visualizations on school web pages or school profile pages. After learning all of that, the presenting member will then walk the audience through how to do this activity. And so there is this opening page 1. If you see this 1 out of 7, page 1 sort of gives you the layout of what this blank slate looks like. Layout, page 2, if you click here, will show an example of a card that somebody puts together, a report card that somebody puts together. And this is the one that members would walk everyone through and say, this is what your example report card can look like. And then they walk through the different tools that are on here, as well as how to use the different elements that are on this page. And so they'll say, although these look small, you're going to have about 10 minutes to not only create this example report card, but also click and expand and look at the different elements of this. And so when you hover over each of these images, you'll see 3 dots. You'll click order and say send to send to front, so that when you expand it, it's the most prominent thing you see. And so you can say, okay, like this is a Florida rating system of A through F. Like DC has 1 to 5 stars. Florida uses A to F ratings for schools. Another state uses an index score. And here we have the star rating, which is behind here, so I have to bring to front. But they will play around with this, and the first thing they'll do is decide which of these they want. And if they don't want a rating, they could sticky note and just say non-summative rating, which is something they'd learn from the slides, and just make a note at the top. I want a non-summative rating. So the first thing they'll do is add the rating and what they want the rating to look like and where they want to see it on the screen. So some teachers and parents have said, if you're going to place a rating, like the star rating, don't put it at the top of the page, put it at the bottom of the page, so that more of the school's information and things that they offer, things that make the school special, would be most prominent at the top, and they'd have to scroll down to see the rating. Then the next step, after they place and write whatever notes they want for that rating, the next thing they would do is then come down here and see all the different ways to visualize the indicators. And the important part about this is that they'll also have the option to choose which indicators they want to see on the report card and how they want to see it displayed. So if they're like, for example, they order this, bring to the front, expand it, and say, oh, okay, this is English language arts, but I also like this for math. And I like how this is a year-to-year growth for the district, school average, and state average. They could then go look through each of these. Again, they'd have about 10 minutes to look through each, expand them, look at each one, and then decide, okay, these are the ones I like, drag them on the screen, and then make notes of saying something like, I like this chart, but I want to see math or science or different measures inside of them. Now, if they forget what the different indicators are, I also place examples of those indicators in the star rating and not in the star rating. So they can go through here and say, okay, I like these bar graphs and I want suspension rate in these.
Can I interject something real quick? Just real
Sure.
quick. with this particular exercise, I do, I'm concerned about the groups that are going to be using them. Well, first of all, as a presenter, how I present it and stuff like that, but also in different sections of town of how we go about doing this, and how much time that we have. There are some groups that are going to be able to go through this whole exercise and they're going to give you the time to do it. This is a very long exercise, so to speak, in the sense of it's going to take a little while. First, you have to explain it, and then you have to actually do it. And I don't know if all groups in different wards are going to be able to have the first time and then go through this with a particular group. Like if you're in Ward 8, we don't have a whole bunch of education groups that we're going to be going to or something like that are going to go through this exercise and stuff like that. Carlene, you can tell me, but maybe, we'll do the education council. But if we went to any other group that's in Ward 8 and tried to do this exercise, this wouldn't work.
Yeah, the technology alone might be
exactly.
Very, it's almost like we could almost do it like on paper and pencil,
Right.
if we still have time to do it. But no, I like the try it, the visuals, but I think we would get stuck on the technology, and it's
Right.
probably not just our ward. I'm
not saying it's just our ward, because I want to our ward too. But there are other parts of town, and specifically for groups of people who really need to know what they're looking at is going to use this. This is a very long exercise for them to try to go to in designing a dashboard or a rating system, or however we want to call it, a school report card. And there's going to be some inequity there just from the way that we can present and the amount of time that we have to present to those particular groups. Even if I took this to like the Anacostia Coordinating Council, I would never have the time. And that's a great group of people to present this to, and really would like to take this back to them because of who they represent. But I would never have the time to do this whole presentation.
Yeah, that's the huge challenge of this, is how do you make something interactive and something that they can really show. I think the purpose of this, just going back to a few meetings ago, of just like a culminating activity that allows folks to say what kind of rating they want, how they want it present, like where they want it presented on a school report card, and so on and so forth. Just like that would be the approach. But yeah, the big challenge is this is not in person. They can't draw this on paper, because that would take two seconds to just draw on paper what they want to see and how they want to see it. I played around with some other tools to allow people to draw online what they want to see. So
let me ask people as an alternative. And I just want to say, I wasn't on in the beginning. My audio wasn't working. It's been very challenging to try to figure out how to do these all of these in a virtual environment. And just kudos to Darren for trying to figure this out. And I think the first two really worked really well. So kudos, can't say enough. On this one, I think it is very complicated. As people have said, I wonder if one option, just trying to think through what options are, because I know there is a lot of interest in getting people to do this kind of culminating activity. If we did it more as almost as a multiple choice, like, here's 4 ways to do your rating. Which one do you want? Here's a set of indicators that you could do. Which ones do you want? Here's, I don't know if there's maybe a third question to ask, and then sort of let it go that way. So at least we get some response on that, some feedback on that, even if people can't put all the visuals together.
And I could do that in Google Forms. I could do show them images of these and say A, B, C, or D. Which one do you prefer the most? Where would you want to see this, at the top, bottom, left, or right? Or
that's a lot better.
And then you could show everyone at the end what that is, and boom, you're done.
That's a lot better in the sense of, presentation wise, tech wise, everything else, time. Yeah. That's a lot better. But when you do this type of exercise, I think about being in school like I am now. This seems more like, we're talking about stuff and we're putting everything on the board, and that's a lot longer presentation.
Yeah.
Then I think most groups have time for, and when you're on an agenda that you have time for.
Yeah.
So can I go back to the question I asked in our in my feedback email last night? So we committed as a committee to focusing on the star rating. This is one of those places where we wander into the report card. And I know why we do it, right? It makes sense. They're intimately connected, but we talked about this pretty much, I don't know, at length for several meetings, that we were not about revising the whole report card. What we were about was adjusting the star rating. So the only thing I would ask is that whatever we choose to do in this like Google form multiple choice thing, that we keep the focus on the star rating, even if we have to ask, like, is there information you still care about that you want to have access to, but that you don't want to be part of the rating? That we just don't get into like, where do you want it on the report card? Do you want it at the top of the report card or the bottom of the report card? Because then I think that varies our purpose. And we've agreed that we were sticking to the star rating. Because if we go into the report card, man, I've got a lot of questions and thoughts and ideas. But I just hope that we can keep the focus on, this is really a proposal to change the rating. And how do we help focus people's effort and energy on recommendations towards that?
Can I say, I totally agree with that, Jessica. And to your question last night, which you sort of answered, I mean, I think the only reason to get into the report card is insofar as if people don't want a rating, you need some sense of what they want. And that, but it should be on the minimal side. I agree with you. It should not be about appearance and where things go and what's bigger
That's
and blah,
helpful.
blah.
That's helpful. That's very helpful. I just, and I'm going to have to jump because I just got a notification that I got to talk to someone about school security at KCP at our school at 9. One thing I do want to say before I get ready to jump at 9 is that as we're looking at this, it's all about timing for us right now. What I'm finding out as I engage people out in the community is that I know we had said we wanted to get a lot of things done at a particular time. We need to rethink that aspect, because as I talk to principals and teachers and things like that, where they are with COVID and vaccinations and stuff like that, it's very hard to engage folks right now. This is not their top priority right now, to engage us in a quality type of thoughtful kind of intentional way. So I think we do need to look at when we say we're going to get this done, because it's just not a priority for the people who really need to give us quality information and input on this. And I want to put that out there now so that we can revisit that discussion, because we've had said we're going to do this, engage principals at this particular time. We're going to engage our community at a particular time. I'm putting that out there now. That's a discussion that we need to have about timing of getting this all done and back to Darren.
If I could just say one thing on that before you go, Jacques, and then we can have more of a discussion, is my concern with that, and it goes back to what we were talking about in the spring, is this is never going to be people's top priority, except for when it comes out, and then it's a top priority for that period of time. And the reality is, as public officials, sometimes you vote on things before you're ready. You didn't have all the time that you wanted to do X, Y, and Z. The reason you have the vote when you do is because that's the moment when it's going to have the impact. So I worry if we delay it, and I'm not saying if we delay it 1 month, that's the end of the world, although then it starts to get into a lot of other things. That's a different issue. But if we delay it more than that, I think we really lose our opportunity to do what I think people wanted to do, which is to at least create the opportunity for OSSE and perhaps the council and others to sort of really weigh in and say, we want this altered before we have another star rating. So that's the other side of the timing issue.
I want to make sure that we do it in a time frame, but from my understanding, there probably will not be another star rating, even with this particular one, because we don't have 2 years, if that's my understanding. So we have some time. It's not that we have to rush because they're about to have a new star rating at a particular time. I think that if I'm, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, as far as actually using the tool that it will be designed, whether it's the old one or the new one, that's a time off. I mean, we have some more time. Am I correct in that?
I think it really depends on how you interpret it. And so far, Aussie has not been clear on it. There is, if you want the rating in place, the description of it in place before the year begins, which is some people's interpretation of it, you really would have to make the request this spring. Now, that's not how it happened originally. We made the decision in the spring and it was in place for the following year, but that rattles people also. So, you know, a little bit of 6 of one, half a dozen. And we don't know how Aussie's going to interpret it.
And
That's why
I
this
want
was
to have this discussion a
choice.
little bit more lengthy, and you know, I'm not trying to delay it for a long period of time, but just to make sure that we get the type of information and input that we need, because I don't want to have a deja vu of what we currently have, because I actually think the last one was actually rushed because they wanted to meet a deadline of when they wanted to put it in place, and we ended up with what we have, which is basically universally panned at this particular time, because people have problems with different aspects of it. And I'm trying to avoid that again, because there is so much going on as I engage folks to even have these conversations that they're like, Jacques, love you, want to talk to you about this, but I got this, and this before I can even engage you in that conversation. So it's even difficult for me to get meetings with folks because of what they're dealing with right now. And that's outside of just me as my job, you know. And I intimately know what teachers and principals and educators are doing right now. They have a lot of shit on their plate. And I'm trying to be sensitive to that, let alone the parents who are nervous about sending their kids to school for various reasons, whether that's safety or that's COVID related issues. And I would really like to be able to get that information from them when they can wrap their minds around how this impacts their child's schooling. So that's what I'm saying. And I apologize, but I have to make a jump right now. Okay.
All right. Well, I will talk and see if we can try to figure out how to push it to Aussie as a question and try to get a firmer answer, which would really help.
Yeah. So Ruth, I'll just jump in on that. I mean, there are two things that come to mind. One, I think I understand that our STAR panel is now happening in October, not in September, so that we can keep September open for COVID or other school reopening issues. Is that right?
In terms of the public meeting?
Yeah.
So we have an option for doing something at the working meeting, not the public meeting. And we were never really going to do, I guess we could do it at the October public meeting, but insofar as that's also when the vote is, I'm not sure we want to do that, but up for discussion.
Yeah, so I guess here's my thing, echoing what Jacques said. You know, all the principals I've talked to have thoughts on STAR. They're all happy to share those. But as I mentioned in my email and at our last brief conversation, when it was just you, Emily, and Darren and I get like 15 minutes of people's attention on STAR as we talk about lots of other things. And I'm thinking a little bit about what that means for Ward 6 in my public engagement. Like, I am on the WIXPO calendar for their September 21st meeting or 22nd meeting, whatever that Tuesday is. But already, like, I am anticipating that they may change the date of that September meeting, because that's now Peabody Elementary is back to school night, and Capitol Hill Montessori at Logan's ribbon cutting, and everything seems to be getting a little condensed in the timelines because of everything. So even if WIXPO is able to engage with me, I don't know. Like, I don't know that I'll be able to get other groups in the city in Ward 6 to engage with me in the way that they might. And I say that because I know there are families who come to the WIXPO meetings regularly who do deeply care about STAR. So I think it's likely that they will engage with me in September. It's less likely that ANCs will engage with me. It's less likely that some of the other parent groups will engage with me, given many complications. But I share Jacques' wondering, which is, OSSI has lots of responsibilities as a state education agency, and now they're in charge of COVID testing and COVID contact tracing. Like, that's no longer DC Department of Health's job at schools. Now that's like OSSI's responsibility to manage contractors on that. And our state superintendent still isn't confirmed, and there's no date for her confirmation hearing that I have seen yet. So the likelihood that OSSI is going to take action would seem to be uncertain. So I wonder if there's a way for us to try to get as much intel as possible to determine like the level of urgency. Is this a absolutely positively got to happen in October? Is it this would be okay to happen in November? And again, not to deprioritize the importance of our work, but simply to readjust its timing in light of what's happening in the city and the world, so that we really can get robust engagement from people. So that's just my 2 cents. But I would say, like, I care a lot about accountability and I like accountability systems, but I think I would be shocked if we put out an accountability rating at the end of this school year, because we don't have the past 2 years of test data. So growth models, like, nearly impossible. We don't have attendance, is going to be at best a mixed bag. So and re-enrollment at this point is meaningless because of the way people are thinking about schools. So I think we buy ourselves a little time on that front.
I just want to be clear. I do not expect or assume that there would be a star rating given in December 2022. This timeline is based on the next rating being out in December 2023. I know that seems like forever from now. That is what this timeline is based on.
Right.
But I agree with, right, so it assumes that there won't be one next year, this December, next December. But I agree with you. Let's try to do some additional due diligence. Everybody knows where they are more, and see if we can figure out more on whether we have some lax time to delay it a bit. So we will look into that.
Okay. Thank you.
Carlene, you want to say anything on this?
Just that initially, when I first reached out to principals, I had 2 who responded, saying that they were interested in talking. But literally like a week made a difference with getting them to respond back to actually schedule. Because I was like, oh, great, I can just find one more principal. And then, yeah, between me, my life, and then like it was literally a week, like couples responded like, okay, yeah, I'll do it. They gave a date and was like, I can squeeze you in here. And then that date didn't work for my personal life. So we missed the ball on that one. So I'm trying to circle back to see if we can get them back to get scheduled to interview or talk. But there was like a quick time frame that 2 responded back. So I was thinking to just do another email blast probably after maybe the first week or 2 of school. To see if I can get the same people back, or just ask with the, I guess, back to school kind of events, if I could just ask them one-on-one, like, hey, do you have a time that we can schedule time to chat? But all I'd say is not going to meet the current timeline, but there was a quick interest, but like literally only of the 40 or however many people I emailed, 2 responded back to those emails. I also caught a lot of people when they were on vacation. Those emails bounced back too. I've talked to somebody else in the building, not talk to them, but like, oh, if you have an emergency, you can talk to our follow-up person. So that was kind of my experience.
All right. So we will sort of try to explore this issue on Aussie's timelines and see what we come up with. Let me quickly go back to and tie up the activity, and then go on to a couple other things on the activity. So I think where we are on that is to try to very much simplify it. And that's sort of where we are on that. Is that correct? People like the idea? Okay. And to Jessica's point, the report card only insofar as it's a replacement for the rating, not all the other appearance stuff. Okay, very good. Next. On the PowerPoint itself, I don't want to do a lot. I saw Carlene sent in one issue, which we will fix to make sure we say strengths along with weaknesses. People should look and see if there's other specific things. Jessica, are you there?
She ran to get coffee.
Oh, all right. Okay, so she's still listening.
I hear us. There we
Okay,
go.
no. So I want to
I'm
go.
here. I'm listening. I'm just refreshing.
No, that's fine. I didn't see it in the chat. So, but I do want to have some open, a little bit of general discussion on it. Jessica raised a concern about whether it went too far into the report card issue, I think was the thing. We can come back to that. And then there is this issue of it's long, and I will just say this, that it is long. It would not be my preference to have 30 slides. There's a lot in there. Here's what I would say, but I'm open to other ways of dealing with this, is we have a lot of views and information that we want to present. We also have different audiences, both across wards and within wards. And so part of what we had said is we'd try to keep, really encourage people to do the activities pretty consistently, but that we would both allow people to, encourage people to, and in fact, they will work through these slides in different ways. And so having more gives people some options for what they're going to go through quickly or not quickly. And so that's sort of where we are. I tried, I know Darren tried to cut it, but also be sensitive to all the things that people wanted to keep in it and add to it. And this is where we land. So open for comments on that.
I appreciate that, Ruth. I think I'm just sensitive to having been teaching online for a few semesters now, working with adult learners who are already knowledgeable about education and care about it. The density, the information density is something my students have, shared back with me that they're pretty sensitive to. Like, how much are you asking people to process while online in a short period of time? And so I think that, to your point, when we have audiences who we're working with who are knowledgeable about STAR already, there's a lot of these slides that are really sort of visual memory joggers, right? Like, what these things are. I'm just bringing them back up in your memory so that we're like setting the tone in place that we're going to have this discussion today. Where I think the information feels a little extra dense is for more mixed audiences, where some folks have a lot of background and content knowledge and others will have less, or where we're asking folks to learn something new and apply it in the same session. So I think this is going to be great. Like, I think the content in the deck is great and probably much closer to the right amount of information for any of our ward education councils. These are folks who live and swim in this work every day, and so it'll be fine for them. Where I think it may prove more challenging to get through is with, other community stakeholders who we might engage with. So like, I don't know the Anacostia Coordinating Council well enough, but I'm thinking like, if I were to take this to like a civic association in Ward 6, there are going to be some folks in the civic association or at the ANC who know the ed world well, and others who don't. And I think this would be more challenging to manage. I wish I had a better solution. Like my only solution that I've offered once before is this would be a really cool 2-part series. Like hey, do you know about this really important thing that exists in our district? And then a chance for folks to apply it in a second session, but I know we're not able to do that. So I realize.
And if anybody can, they can, if anybody can do a 2-part, they can divide it up. I mean, that's an option.
Yeah, but not in a month.
Not what?
Not in a month, right? Like,
right.
I don't think we have the time to do a 2-part session with the timeline we're working with. That's my 2 cents. I don't know if you feel different, Rep. Reed.
My plan, honestly, and I know it won't give us, it may give us differentiating data or different data, or it might be a data quality issue. But my plan was to basically kind of read the room and cater the slides to who I was presenting to. And I know the risk with that. But it's almost like when you get like those pre-made slides that come with the textbook and you're kind of like, all right, do I skip slide 3 or do I focus on slide 4? What like group is going to give me more information about, like the Anacostia Coordinated Council will probably really tell me about, this is what schools look like. We've already did certain elements before. Great. Ward 8 Ed Council might give me, you know, just they want all the slides, and they might tell me about other states and their knowledge and impact of like what's actually happening in school. So my plan was just to kind of just take whatever you all pick, because I do think we're like stuck on the slides right now. Just kind of go with that to facilitate, because I think it's just better to have like just information. I think we don't have any information right now, or maybe we do, I don't know, but just kind of catering whatever we have to the audience that I have, just so we can just start the collection process.
And can I also say to the data collection process, and Jessica and I talked about this at the last meeting a little bit, is like for me, you know, and this, as individuals, and this goes for the principal interviews as well, each of us is going to learn, I think, an enormous amount by having these presentations and back and forth and discussions and activities with the groups that we talked to. That is the most important part of this, is we're all learning and getting feedback from our constituents. A smaller part of that is going to be, we're going to get some standardized data from these slides. And I think that would be true no matter what we did. The reality is these are going to be back and forth between each of us and our group. And that's the most important way to think about them. They really are to help us have good engagement with our constituents. And we're going to read the room, as Carlene says, mix and match them as it makes sense. And, you know, we'll get some standard feedback perhaps on these activities. But other than that, I think we have to rely on each other to sort of say, this is what I learned, and this was what was important, and this is part of what's going to have an effect on how I make my recommendations. So. All right, so what I'm going to ask then is, so we're going to try to figure out this last activity. If people want to take another run through on this, just so we can sort of clean up anything that we need to in these slides, and then we're going to say, this is what it is. To Carlene's point, we need something, and just start getting these out to people. And we'll make, you know, appropriate note that, you know, people, we've tried to include the different things that people want. We expect people will read the room and choose which ones to emphasize. And let me just say one other thing, to everybody's point on the density of the slides, and to Carlene's point, I mean, part of the reason they're dense is so people can read from them. And that's, again, it, on the one hand, it makes it easier for the presenter. It says, here it is, you can read it, or you can summarize it, do it how you want. That's part of why they're that way. So it is like getting the slide set for the class, as Carlene said. Anyway, does that sound right to people, to just go forward in that way?
Yes.
All right. All right. So we will try to do that and get that out very soon. I guess we should give it I think pending the last slide, or maybe even before we get the last activity, we should probably send it out to the entire board just to take a look-see, say we're getting ready to finalize this. If there's anything anybody has an issue with, let us know, but then try to get it out to everybody for use by early next week. And then we're also going to translate it, which I think will take another week or so, if I'm remembering what Darren said. So, okay. So that is a plan.
I will say the Ward 8 Ed Council was really excited about getting this presentation or in participating in. We mentioned it. We talked about it at our last meeting. Was it last week? Last week.
Great.
So they're excited.
Great.
The folks at Wixpo are also really excited, I will say, and you know, the meeting is recorded, so I say this with full knowledge of this, but it has come up at the Wixpo meeting. Valerie Jablow raised it explicitly, like the Wixpo group is much whiter than Ward 6 as a whole. So I always just get nervous about who is present in that room versus who exists in the community that is Ward 6. That's my challenge. That's, I know that's on me, but I do think that the Ward 6 public school parent organization is very excited to engage in this. And I'm hopeful that we'll get a maybe broader than our usual attendees group to engage in this particular conversation.
And let me raise one thing. When we first did sort of a demo of this with some folks from C4DC back in, oh my goodness, June, May, I don't even remember at this point, there was a lot of interest there in making it available so that people could take it to their own PTO meetings, their own ANC meetings. And so I think that's another thing, is we can just do that. And again, let people, they'll see and hear what we do with it, or they'll just look at the slides and they'll mix and match. I don't think it's a big concern, but I think that would be good, and it'll just get out there and people will learn more than they knew before. And we'll do it for other groups as well. Okay. All right. Very good. All right. Okay. It's 9:19. We set this for an hour. We can end right now. The other thing we could do is get a status report on where everything is at. I sort of think I sent a lot of that out here, how we're going to distribute the teacher survey, which will be done, I think, tomorrow or the next day, or talk about if and how we want to use the time at the working meeting, or are people game for 10 more minutes, or people need to get off?
I gotta go.
I
Okay.
also need to go.
All right. Okay. The status stuff, I think, is in the email I just sent right before the email. So you'll see that. I'm going to ask Darren to send out to people just so you have it, the email that he had sent to Jacques and me about all the teacher groups that are going to get the teacher survey, teacher and other groups, so that they can all push it out. That starts, I think, tomorrow or the next day. And I'll just email folks about how to handle the working meeting. One idea is just to let everybody talk a little bit about the principal interviews they've had, just to have sort of a conversation is one way to do it. So I'll put that out by mail. Thank you, guys. 8:15 for an hour. Everybody's good. So have a great day, everybody. Thank you very much. And again, Darren, thank you so much for everything that has gone into trying to make these.
Of course, I'll share out the minutes from this.
Okay.
Bye.
For the parents. All right, bye.